Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be. You should be taking in all of the content at Detroit Bad Boys, at Pistons Jack, all of the great Pistons content out there. There's plenty local Pistons content everybody should be listening to. Maybe bias here. Also, make sure you're reading Omari on the Free Press. And little bit of bias, maybe a lot of bit of bias, go read the Motor City Hoops Substack. I think we put out pretty good stuff over there as well. But today, we're joined by the GOAT. I think we can call him a friend of the podcast and a friend in the real world. A Detroit Bad Boys legend, a Pistons content creation legend, helped me get my start. Lazarus Jackson. Laz, what is going on, man?
I'm doing great, guys. It's great to be here. It's great to be part of this. It's always funny because, like, I get the text from Omari. Omari texts after the game, texts at like 12:30 in the morning. I'm like, I'm going to respond to this later. But I'm going to definitely say yes, but not right now.
Fair enough. I'm going to do it now because I might forget in the morning.
You might forget. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody joining us live. I know as people trickle in, be active in the comments, ask your questions, get that stuff in. We'll get to it. But I have a little bit of trivia. Hopefully neither of you guys listen to the Hoop Collective, or if you do, you haven't listened yet. So over on the Hoop Collective, they brought up this little interesting trivia question. So the other night, the Knicks had Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns, teammates, go for triple doubles. The 4 previous times that it happened in the NBA, it was involving Nikola Jokic and or Russell Westbrook. The time before that was done by our Detroit Pistons in the year after COVID, beginning of March 2021. I would like to know if any of our listeners, viewers here live, Wes or you, Omari or Laz, can tell me the 2 players. Okay, Pistons talk. What are we doing? Come on, my friends. Yep. Can you name me the 2? Did you both see it then?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, yeah. Laz, can you guess then?
Absolutely not. I have zero clue.
Omari, you saw it?
Yeah, but I was actually going to guess incorrect. No, I was going to get one right and one wrong.
Who are you? So we'll go ahead and say it.
So it's a Mason Plumlee?
Yes.
Okay. And then I have no idea who else.
So
my guess was going to be DeLon Wright and Dennis Smith Jr.
So you would have got Plumlee as well, Omari?
I would not have gotten Plumlee. I was I thought DeLon Wright and Dennis Smith Jr., even though I don't think they played at the same time, actually, now that I think about it.
I don't think so.
I would have to go back and check. They played for the Pistons that season, but I don't know.
I want to know if Pistons Talk actually knew it, or if he saw if he had listened to the episode as well.
But I covered DeLon Wright triple-double all the way back in April 2019. I think he had back-to-back triple-doubles at the tail end of that Grizzlies season before they drafted Ja. So I could be conflating that with his very brief tenure with the Pistons during COVID. But I don't have to go back and check. I feel like he had a triple-double in Detroit. I just don't know if it was with Dennis Smith Jr.
He definitely did.
Wes doesn't have the chat open yet, and he said Killian and Plumlee, maybe Sadiq. So we're getting some Plumlee ones. The correct answer is Dennis Smith Jr. and Mason Plumlee.
I would be shocked if it was no offense to Sadiq, but I would be shocked if he had 10 assists.
Yeah. Also, now that you say that, I vaguely remember this game. It was against the Raptors.
It was against the Raptors. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Man. Wow. I've watched a lot of Pistons basketball.
So Pistons Talk says he knew it, remembered watching the game. Plumlee had a couple triple-double. And yes, I think he had his first career triple-double a couple weeks before that. Ricardo brings up the Plumlee crossover game. I don't remember that game specifically, but I remember.
That was an all-time great crossover, by the way.
I remember the crossover. Harry says, what up, though? So I just thought it was interesting. I was listening to the Hoop Collective, and then all of a sudden they're bringing up this trivia. And of course, that was the year we were coming out of COVID. So it wasn't the bubble, whatever stuff. Detroit didn't play in that. It was that next season.
But that was the Raptors were playing in Florida, right? So it was just a weird scene still all around.
All around, yeah. And there was some crazy roster stuff. I remember I vaguely remember a Christmas Day win with whenever COVID had finally hit the roster, maybe Hamadou had a big game or something. I don't know. I've been around enough years now that some of this stuff is starting to run together a little bit. So, all right, let's get into it. I said I didn't want to talk about the altercation last night, and then we started talking about it before, and I was like, okay, maybe I have more to say than what I thought. But I want to give you guys, Laz in particular, your thoughts on what went down last night between the Pistons and the Timberwolves.
So short term, hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Entertaining.
Yeah.
Long term, and Kuka Hill pointed this out on Twitter. I want to give credit to him because I was thinking that, but he said it first, so I want to give credit to him. He's like, is this going to be an issue in the playoffs for a young team that has not been to the playoffs before, is like kind of riding a really high emotional wave? And it's like, it's easy. You can definitely envision a scenario where that crashes in on them with the pressure of a playoff setting in a way that would leave a sour taste in the mouth a little bit, even after like the amazing season, tripling the win total, everything that's happened so far this year. And I want to give the guys a little bit of credit. Like, I think Stu in particular, like Stu can reel it in a little bit. Like he plays hard, and that pisses people off more than anything else. I don't think he's like out there looking to antagonize people. Ron Holland's looking to antagonize people.
Yeah, it's a nice 1-2 punch. Like, what I say about Stu is that he's not a bully. He will like match or exceed the energy once it's presented, but he won't necessarily just out of nowhere completely escalate something. But seeing the lead up to how it sort of boiled over in that game, like in hindsight, it was like, that's absolutely the type of matchup that would bring that out if it would not be the Pacers. And that's probably the fear in the playoffs, right? That they're trending toward like that 4-5 Pacers series. And, I think that's a team that kind of brings out some of their worst instincts. But Dante DiVincenzo is a smack talker. He's one of the most notorious agitator smack talking guys in the league. And Minnesota has a few of those guys. I don't think Nas Reed has that reputation, but like Jaden McDaniels, like, he could be a hothead at times. And like Ant, obviously, although Ant really wasn't doing anything, I think, last night. But these two teams, like, it's just certain teams that are going to bring that out of the Pistons. And that's something that scenario was different because they did kind of tag team Ron. And even though Stu was kind of instigating at the beginning, it did sort of become a thing where once Dante put his hands on Ron, that sort of is what pushed it over the top. So I don't know if you fear something like that being recreated again, but this team does like to fight and scrap, and it probably is a line that you have to find at times to where it's not costing you a game.
Yeah, I mean, Omari, how close were you to everything?
Oh yeah,
like, I was on like the opposite sideline, so like I literally the rest of the game, especially when the game was like pretty much done, like I'm just like scouring like Reddit and X and Blue Sky for like footage of the fight because all of their backs were turned to us because we were on the opposite baseline. So like we saw the initial thing boil over with Dante and Ron and Nas Reed, but once the bench is clear and everybody ran over, like I couldn't have told you what happened. So yeah, I feel like I was the CIA just trying to piece all the videos together. Like that's what I spent the last 15 minutes of the game doing.
I mean, let's not act like the Pistons don't have a few trash talkers as well. You won't find a bigger Malik Beasley fan than me. And on Thursday on Game Theory Podcast, I will make a strong push for him to be one of the best moves of the offseason in the entire NBA. Malik Beasley does his little hip shimmy after every third make along with some and I'm for it. Listen, guys, I'm for it. I'm also okay when the other team wants to come back at him for it as well. To me, everything was fine. Even the stuff with Dante DiVincenzo, people have called out him going at, I don't think what Dante did to Stu was outside the realm of what happens in basketball. Stu was shooting
about the floater.
Yeah. I haven't seen the whole thing, so maybe Dante did something else. But in terms of Stu taking a 12-foot floater and Dante saying This happens every game. You think non-shooters in the corner don't get told that from the opposing bench when they shoot one in front of the bench? I mean, so I don't have a problem with that. I haven't watched it close enough to really break it down to like who's at fault. Here's what I just don't like that anybody's being made out to be a bad guy. And unfortunately, the one that gets it the most is who? Isaiah Stewart. Like, you know, the whole thing of this is all Stu does. He's just a fighter. He's just a whatever. It's like, okay, well, you obviously don't watch the Pistons play and understand the real basketball value he brings. That's kind of what makes me frustrated, Laz, is he gets the bad rep like he did something crazy wrong or something like that, when I don't know that I'm overly upset at anybody in this situation. Like, was a true punch even thrown in this situation? So, like, if it doesn't spill into the stands, is it even that huge of a talking point right now, Laz?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the Nas finger wag was like I understood why things escalated after that.
That was confusing, right? Like, were you confused by Nas's immediate reaction to
little.
Ron's very like calm foul?
Just because, like you mentioned, like that wasn't an excessive basketball play. Like Nas didn't he didn't land hard or anything. It was just like it's a regular NBA foul, and Nas like took great umbrage with it. And it's like okay, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be any problems with this. Like outstanding, like Omari, the NBA hasn't said any like no one's getting suspended for more than a couple games or anything like.
Yeah, that's what's come out, but I would imagine, you know, maybe they take into account like the repeat offender, or you know, maybe you just slap the wrist enough to just say like don't do that. But in general, I mean, this isn't the first time we've had players like fight in like the past year. Like there's been scuffles, and I can't recall too many really significant suspensions. Like outside of that, like if it's just like a one-time thing, right? So you know, maybe there's something with Stu just because he did draw the automatic 1-game suspension back in January when he crossed over the flagrant threshold. But yeah, like I would even argue that maybe they went overboard with the ejections to begin with. Like I don't know, like that got a lot more attention just because 7 people were ejected. But kind of watching it back, like you could probably argue that maybe 3 ejections were truly warranted based on how it escalated. So you know, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know how Sasser got ejected. Well. He was just like there.
Yeah.
In the pile.
So this
and,
is
and also Ron didn't really do anything that earned a ejection either. Like he was just sort of in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. A national media podcast today said Sasser was maybe the one guy that may have thrown a punch or something. So like this is what I need to go find just like the full video or whatever. Cause like YouTube user says there's a pretty good picture of Dante fist on Ron's face, but was it a true punch? And I want to be clear. I haven't watched it close enough to know. So Steven says there were punches. So maybe so. But yeah, I don't know.
Were they punches or like NBA punches?
Yeah, that's true. So
yeah, I don't think anyone like had like a wind up, like, you know, like a Mike Tyson type deal. Like it was more so there was so much commotion that I don't even know how you get an accurate punch off when like everybody's shoving each other. You have like 25 people shoving each other. Like how many legit punches can you get off in that type of environment? So
yeah, I mean, so people like keep referencing Ron's bloody lip and stuff like that can happen just in a scuffle. And listen, I'm not trying to like.
He might have just hit the floor, you know.
My thing, like, I'm just not mad at anybody. Like, I'm just like it's kind of whatever. Okay, so Steven is very clear that he thinks that multiple punches were thrown. I would have to really watch the video to know. I guess if there were, then I would feel differently about it.
And what's so tough is that Nas Reed is literally buried under the entire scuffle until the very end. Like Dante has like this massive push, and then Nas Reed finally gets out, and Ron was also under there. So who knows what was going on down there? Like they could have been having an all-out brawl for all we know. Like, but they were completely covered, so it's tough to say.
All right. I think we've covered this enough. And like, it's one of those, again, like my biggest takeaway was, well, I do like that they have each other's back. I like that JB has consistently had the team's back and supported them. And like, I think a lot of it is like, we were 14 wins last year. You're not going to come in and punk us because we're like, you know, the bottom of the barrel in the NBA or something like that. So like, that's my thing with it. The other thing is what you guys referenced earlier. I just don't want to see suspensions that cost this team standings and seedings and stuff like that, lads, because they've worked way too hard to, miss Ron Holland for multiple games. Isaiah, I don't care what happens to the Timberwolves, guys. Go ahead, Omari.
Is it really a terrible thing if they slide down the standings?
We're not having this.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I'm just saying, that might. Yeah, I don't know. Worst things could happen.
Jalen Brunson finally had some media availability. He's like, yeah, man, I'm working to get back into things, and the playoffs start in 2 weeks.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying there are worse outcomes if it does cost them seeding. I'm just saying.
Because you. So both of you would rather play the Knicks than the Pacers?
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I would rather go to New York than Indianapolis, really.
I would rather lose to the Knicks in 7 than beat the Pacers. I think that gets you. Gets you further.
A healthy Knicks. It's not like, or do you think like Brunson may not be ready to play, and so therefore
like Brunson comes back game 2?
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that gets you further cachet nationally, being competitive in MSG in the Garden. That you're not on NBA TV. If you're in a Pacers series, you are on NBA TV. You are the 2 p.m. Saturday game.
And the last 2 playoff series were NBA TV playoff series. So
I am not ready for this conversation. We went from 14 wins to strategic seeding.
Welcome to fandom, Bryce.
Oh no, I don't like this. I do not like this. Isn't this what Cleveland did last year too? Like, didn't Cleveland? I feel like
on the final game of the season, they tanked hard against Charlotte. Yeah,
to get the Orlando matchup.
Yeah,
and I'm not critiquing JB. I'm just saying obviously JB seems to be comfortable with a strategy in this realm. But I just want to see you guys play.
Do you think there's some gamesmanship happening on that front with Cade Cunningham? It's like that's where my mind has been over the last couple of weeks. I think the Dallas game was the same time as Michigan State's opening NCAA tournament game. So I did not watch the Dallas game very closely. I was at the bar. I saw we lost, and I was like, well, how did that happen? But I didn't see Cade get injured. I think Cade played his normal amount of minutes. And so I'm not saying Cade, I'm not saying that they're resting him. I'm not saying it's a phantom injury. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying I didn't notice. I feel like I would have noticed if somebody's hey, this is where Cade got hurt and he sat for the last 4 games. And I think there's some level of gamesmanship. I think it's been a long season. This is the most games this is the most games he's played in a season so far to date. And so you do want him healthy for the playoffs. So I wonder if there's a little bit of there's multiple factors that play into why he's not playing. But I don't know. At 5 games, I start to get worried, right? That something's actually wrong. And in that case, it doesn't matter who you play. It's going to be tough sledding, right? So I guess where are we on Cade Cunningham watch?
Only because Cade does have a history of missing sometime every season with just random lower body stuff. He had a hip impingement a couple years ago, and he missed the Dallas game because of that. And we don't need to go through the full history. So, I think it's something. I think if Cade could play, for sure, he would be playing. But obviously, with that, you're not going to. It's not a scenario where you're we absolutely have to do everything possible to get the 4 seed, if that makes sense. You may not be stealth tanking, but it's also there are varying levels of risk with any injury when guys come back, right? You could always debate what 100% is, and just playing hurt to an extent is just sort of the expectation. So if there is a time that you could actually allow him to try to get as close to 100 as possible, then you probably do that now with the season already by far beyond any doubt a smashing success. So that's kind of how I would put it.
Okay.
Yeah, Wes brings up the definitely Cade could play basketball at night if they really wanted him to. I think I agree with that. No, so this is the other thing, Steven. Is Cade guaranteed to be eligible for postseason awards? Does he still need to play games to be there?
He's hit 65.
He's hit 65.
He hit 65 against Dallas.
Yeah, so you need 65. with 20 minutes or more, which is why like Isaiah Stewart is not going to be eligible for postseason awards. Isaiah Stewart has played 69 games already, but like not even half of those I think are 20 minutes worth of games. Cade obviously has. So that 65 makes him eligible for the all NBA stuff. So to your point, Laz, I think it's a combination of things. Like I assume they feel comfortable that they're in the playoffs, that Cade has his all NBA resume ready to go, and resting him, whether it's legit or just like super precautionary, it makes sense, right? And it's like, you're either going to play a Knicks team that's really good starting lineup has been there, or you're going to play the Pacers, which a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year that plays a really tough pace, or you're going to play Giannis and I realize the Bucks are probably the least likely, like really, really hard for that to happen. But like you're going to play a good team regardless. Why not be as full strength as possible, right? I mean, honestly, even Tobias, right? Like there's not all NBA stuff, but I think Tobias looked the most spry in the first game after the All-Star break. I don't think that's a coincidence, right? And so if you can get Tobias a little bit of rest here as well, I think it makes sense until the Hawks really put some pressure on you somehow, right? Like I would think that if Detroit lost 3 in a row, Atlanta wins 3 more, and it's like, hey, we got to go make sure we lock this thing in, I think we may see this team back to full strength. We're going to go to short break. When we come back, we'll stay in this realm. I want to get Laz's thoughts on Ausar Thompson playing the 4 and Ausar Thompson offensive initiator that we've seen in these non-Cade minutes. So we'll dive into that right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 2. And Laz, as our treasury guest, I'll go ahead and hand the mic back to you. We recapped the fight thoroughly. Where are we going to take this convo next?
Yeah, let's go with Ausar, Laz. Yeah. What do you think with first defensively at the 4? We saw him having to guard Julius Randle last night. And then also some of the stuff we've seen offensively. I don't want to get your thoughts on the transition Ausar stuff. I think we all kind of have seen that. I'm talking about like half court offense, Ausar initiate offense type stuff.
Yeah, he was struggling for a couple weeks there. And so it was a lot more of a discussion. And it was partially due to foul trouble, and that's mostly on the defensive end. But it was also, there were a lot of moments where it felt like rookie year Ausar, where he was just kind of parked in the corner, like not doing much. And I'm glad to see them kind of shake off a little bit of that. Some of that is like transition, obviously, but that's not the focus. Some of that is his willingness, a newfound willingness to take perimeter shots. He made one against San Antonio. He didn't make one last night, did he?
No, but I think he took. I know the last couple of games he's finally brought back the little 8-10 foot mid-range jumper.
Yeah,
I know he made one in one of the last 2 games. I don't know if it was last night or the game before.
Yeah, and so I'm glad that he's like rediscovering his ability to do stuff on and off the ball for this team. And I do think, and part of the reason I'm excited about that is the high-low stuff between him and Jaylen Duren as well. Some of the baseline cuts he's been making, and Duren being able to find him there, alleviating the like lack of spacing you get when you have 2 guys who are non-shooters out there. So yeah, I'm encouraged. Do I think that? I don't know. Do I think that like it's like going to be magically fixed? Like no, but I do think that like things are better than they were. With Cade out, I thought that there might be a little bit more of a return to the Philly game before the Dennis Schroeder trade, where we saw a little bit more of him initiating. With Schroeder in place, like I see why they're not doing that. But also, like, I don't know, this is as, again, if we're talking about maybe the emphasis is not on winning every single game from here on out because you've already done a lot of winning. This is a good runway to give him some opportunities to operate with the ball in his hands.
You know what's funny? Not that the Pistons are trying to lose right now, but think about the dynamic between the end of last season. Like, hey, we don't need to win any more games because we want to tank for lottery odds. And then this year, like, hey, we don't need to win any more games because we already have a playoff spot locked up so we can rest our best player. And that was 12 months ago that
Yeah.
they were like, we can't win because we need the number one pick. And I just, it never ceases to amaze me, Omari, that we're 12 months removed from what we all watched last year. So sorry,
Yeah.
off topic a little bit, but
No, for sure. I was going to point out that Ausar did go like exactly 2 months without taking a 3-pointer. Like it was like literally like the same day from like January to March. And then he's begun to take that shot more. So what's interesting to me, and I don't know if the numbers back this up, this is more of like an eye test thing. It seemed like Ausar, when he was not taking those threes, it wasn't even part of his diet. It seemed like we saw him be like a bit more. It seemed like he fit into the half court offense a bit better than he has over the last few weeks. And I don't know if some of that's just him kind of going back to, just finding his spots sort of, within the offense. Because some of that too is that he's at foul trouble, So
Yeah.
So there have been some games where he just hasn't been in like his natural flow. But that is one thing I noticed. Like he went 2 months without taking a three, and he was like probably playing his best basketball, and he's begun to incorporate that a bit more. And I just wondering if he's trying to open things up a bit more, because teams have, I think been doing a better job with him in half court scenarios.
Laz, I want to get your thoughts on the defensive side, because with Tobias out, we've now seen Ausar starting at the 4, and I know it hasn't been with Cade at the 1 and all of that stuff, but Mr. Ray says Ausar is still so young. I'm not worried about him playing the 4 long term. How big do we expect modern 4s to be? What are your thoughts on him, quote unquote, fitting into the 4-man spot? Because I feel like that was post Jeremy Grant. I think this was an issue for the Pistons in terms of having that kind of size of player. Tobias has filled that archetype even at his older age. We saw Ausar guard Julius Randle. They played
Evan
the Cavs
Mobley.
recent. Evan Mobley. I think the NBA will continue to get as big as they possibly can. They will play as skilled players as they possibly can across the board. I think that's where the NBA is going, but it's not like Ausar doesn't fit that in terms of his athleticism, some of those things. How many bad matchups are there for Ausar at the 4 in the NBA? Do you think that can be his long-term position, quote unquote?
I wouldn't go in that direction where I Trajan Langdon. I think it's possible. I don't think I like Asar's defense much better as like a on the ball, as a guy who's willing to make life difficult for shot creators. And there are fewer shot creators playing the 4. I thought he did a really good job on Mobley, but Mobley's you can get into Mobley's chest and still Mobley's been better about that this year, but you can still kind of get into his chest and like affect his game. I thought once Julius Randle got comfortable with Ausar being on him, I didn't love that matchup as much. But you can get away with it in certain matchups, right? We're talking playoffs. The Pacers don't have I feel comfortable with him on Siakam, right? But I would much rather use him to kind of slow down Halliburton, who is the real engine of that team. I feel comfortable with him guarding like a Mikal Bridges or an OG Anunoby, but I would love to have him on Jalen Brunson, which is the real engine of that offense, right? And so I think the place he makes the most impact, especially defensively, is as a perimeter player rather than like a rim protector. And the rim protection is nice, like from the perimeter. Don't get me wrong, but I that's where I think he's more of a wing, and I would shift him into more of a wing role than at the 4.
I think this is the point, Laz. You just hit on it. It's not so much of do we want Ausar guarding the Julius Randles, the Pascal Siakams, the Evan Mobleys. It's if he's your quote unquote 4, and I realize it's positionless. I'm not trying to pigeonhole him.
And switch everything. And,
yeah, but if you don't have a Tobias Harris body in the starting lineup with him, he has to guard Julius Randle, because you're going to put Tim Hardaway Jr. on Julius Randle. You're going to put Tim Hardaway Jr. on Pascal Siakam. That's where Tobias Harris has been very valuable in terms of he can at least take the Julius Randle, the Evan Mobley, the OG Anunoby matchup, so Ausar can go guard the Jalen Brunsons, the Tyrese Halliburtons. And last night, it would have been Anthony Edwards. Now, I want to give Tim Hardaway Jr. a little bit of a shout out. I thought he did pretty good on Anthony Edwards through the first half.
Yeah.
And then Ant obviously had a really good third quarter, and Ant's really, really good. But I think this is where this is fun now, right? It's like, okay, what kind of fits best here? What makes Ausar the best weapon on the defensive end and some of those type of things? I think I'm with you. That archetype of forward, the Jeremy Grant archetype, the Tobias Harris archetype. It's why I'm a huge Tumani Kamara fan. That archetype of forward, I've kind of fallen in love with because it allows someone like Ausar to just go guard whoever. Omari, what did you think about how Ausar has taken those matchups and kind of the long-term impact of, is he kind of your 4, or do you like the idea of him playing the 3 and somebody else kind of falling into that 4 spot?
Yeah, I think honestly a lot of it will depend on the roster around him as well. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I think the fact that you can put him on a Randall, you can put him on a Mobley and feel somewhat good about it, I think opens up a lot. And, especially as Ron Holland develops, I wonder how interchangeable some of those matchups will be. But I do agree with Laz, just in the sense of, like, we've seen what Ausar can do one-on-one with guys like Shea and, James Harden and, some of those elite ball handlers. And I think especially in the playoffs, like, you probably just want Ausar to just be like the first option specialist, right? Like, not even think too hard about it. Like, whoever their best player is, you just keep Ausar there. Whereas I feel like this season he's done some of that, but he's also taken on like their possessions where he'll defend, 2 or 3 different positions. And, I feel like, I don't think he's had more blocks this year, like per 100 than last year, but I feel like he's getting more like weak side blocks and like, being in like that role a bit more. So like, I'm more so aligned with like Laz for sure. Like I would rather just keep him on like the lead ball handler matchups, Luka, LeBron, like those types of guys. But yeah, some of that too. Like, yeah, if Ron, evolves into a guy who could take those on, then yeah, like you could put Ausar on the bigger 4s and smaller 5s and probably still feel good about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been encouraged by JB tinkering a little bit and playing both those guys together over the last like couple weeks or so. Some of that has been like opponents. I remember like that was the San Antonio game when like the game was kind of out of hand in the second half. Like that's when we saw that lineup. But like both Ausar and Ron look and feel like they're going to be here for the long term. And you need to figure out if those guys can play together and like what, and if they can play together, like how does it look? How does it work? And so playing those guys together is,
and to your point, like I did actually ask JB about this, Ron pairing, like, just about the half court aspect, like, modern offense says you can't play more than 2 non-shooters together, and that's essentially 3 non-shooters, with Stu, like Stu can still knock him down, but that just hasn't been a big part of his shot diet. And JB's answer was essentially like, the idea is that you're not playing in half court at all. Like, they're just creating havoc on defense and you're getting out in transition as much as possible, which we've seen them be able to, sustain in spurts. A lot of that just kind of depends on the team. But I just thought his response was interesting, right? Like, it's not they need to be better at shooting. It's just focus on defense, create that havoc, and don't even get into a half court set. So I think the chaos aspect of it is kind of what they're leaning into at this point.
I think that's what I'm fascinated the most for the playoffs is this team that has been so high in pace all season, Laz. Are they able to keep that pace in the playoffs? I think that's why the Knicks series is even more fun, because the Knicks will try to slow it down, right? If they get the Pacers, we know what that series is going to look like, because both teams kind of have the same blueprint in terms of we're going to try to disrupt things defensively, and then we're going to push the pace, turnover, defensive rebound, or even made shot. And so I think that's what I'm fascinated to see kind of how some of this stuff translates with that. I also like Ron is a little smaller than Ausar, so I don't know that his defensive versatility is at the same level. Laz, you mentioned
not yet.
Yeah. Dennis Schroeder earlier. What have your thoughts been with him? I try to, any chance I get on a national level, I try to tell people, you can look at the box score numbers all you want, the efficiency, whatever. That doesn't show the impact of Dennis Schroeder. Like, he has been incredible just in terms of impact for this team. Have you felt the same in terms of his impact, even though your guy Kobe White is top 15 in the NBA in scoring post All-Star break?
Yeah, we had that little discussion on Blue Sky. But the thing that's impressed me the most about Dennis has been his defense. He's been a much more competitive and engaged defender than I gave him credit for. I mean, like, part of that I'm sure is like he's coming from Brooklyn. Like, what am I playing for? What am I defending for? Versus like, hey, like we're in a playoff scenario. You need to lock in. But especially there have been a lot of Cade Dennis minutes in which Dennis has taken like the primary defensive like perimeter role so that Cade doesn't have to. And to me, that's something that's been extremely, and he's done a good job. He's done a good job of defending like in that position. And to me, that's extremely valuable because again, like I don't want Cade to have to. Cade's a good defensive player. Cade's a fine defensive player. I don't want him preoccupied with like shutting like somebody down on that end of the floor. Like I want him saving and conserving his energy for the offensive end. So I've really appreciated the defensive end of Dennis more than like definitely more than I thought I was going to post trade.
Interesting.
He's very pesky and he's got like amazing instincts. I feel like he's always in the right place. It seems like
also a bit of a smack talker, right? in a way that I think fits in nicely with the rest of that bench lineup.
Wes tells me Ron is actually an inch taller, but a little bit slighter than Ausar.
Ron's taller, but not nearly as big.
Interesting. Like, I guess I've seen them once in person, but not at this, like in Denver, you set way up tall, so not close enough. I guess I just feel like the way they play, I would have guessed that Ausar was a little bit bigger than Ron.
Ron's closer to a 4, I think.
Interesting. Nice. Omari, just your thoughts. I know we get a chance to talk all the time, but your thoughts on Schroeder in terms of just like his impact. And I think Laz brought up a really interesting, like him and Cade's minutes together have been like solid. Like when you bring in Schroeder, you think, okay, these are the non-Cade minutes, type of stuff. But we've also seen them be able to figure things out together on the floor and do some things with that.
Yeah, I mean, we spent the first 2/3 of the season just talking about they need a veteran point guard. They need a veteran point guard. And like Schroeder has just been the epitome of like a veteran point guard, but like better than like the best they've brought in like past seasons, right? Like it's been a while since they had, a vet like Schroeder who I think has impacted the game on this high of a level. Like not even like you mentioned, like his efficiency hasn't even been amazing, but just the organization, right? The vets, like, guys like Beasley, I feel like I've sort of intuitively connected with them pretty well, with them just playing off each other, knowing where each other are going to be. They don't go 3-1 this past week without Schroeder, I don't think. Like, I think they probably drop, either Cleveland or the Spurs game. Like, and Schroeder just hit so many big shots down the stretch that helped them close that one out. Like he's been like phenomenal. Like I feel like since he came in, like that impact was pretty immediate. And like every role they've used him in, whether it's just conducting the second unit on his own, playing up with Cade, he's closed games for them alongside with Cade, and those minutes have been good. Like that stuff has just been huge. Like I think it's just gives you a little bit more stability, a little bit more know-how, and like he's really I think lifted the floor for this team.
So real quick, I looked up the standing reach. They actually have the same standing reach, Ron Holland and Ausar Thompson, via combine measurements, which aren't always accurate. I think as we know now, oh man, I'm slipping on his name. They got drafted by the Rockets from Kentucky. He has
Reed Shepherd.
Reed Shepherd. How can I forget Reed? I think he flubbed his standing reach, so his vertical would look a little bit better. But yeah, I would have guessed that Ausar was, a touch taller, but standing reach same. Obviously Ausar a little bit bigger. So yeah, I think the versatility and interchangeability between those guys could be really, really interesting. So all right, we've talked Ausar Thompson, Ron Holland. I want to ask about Jaylen Duren, Laz, because this is always a fun conversation. Brad, thank you, long time listener, first time part of the live show. You guys do tremendous work. Thank you so much. Jaylen Duren, I'm eating some words right now because I was unimpressed at times, Laz. It's getting better. Sometimes it's baby steps, but it is getting better.
The last time I was on this podcast, I think we closed with like Jaylen Duren's like still not as consistent defensively as we'd like him to be, and now like that was a couple months ago. Like he's made major leaps and bounds. He's just been more position, and it's not like oh man, like there's rocket boots and like he's blocking everything in sight. He's just way more he's not out of position nearly as much. Like I went to the Spurs game and you could see this live. Like it's like against Bismack Biyombo to start, but there were a lot of times where like Chris Paul and Steph Castle are like trying to drag him out. And he's like, no, like I know where I'm supposed to be. Like I'm navigating things. I've got active hands in passing lanes. Like I'm making stuff happen without leaving my feet and causing cracks in the defense. And so I've been really impressed with the progression that Jaylen Duren has shown over the last couple of months. It's gotten to the point where I'm like, man, like he's going to be 25 million, 28 million, 29 million. Like, it's like what kind of extension world are we living in with JD? But if he keeps this up, like you gladly pay it. So yeah, I've been really impressed with Duren's improvement defensively. Offensively, there's still been like he's been really effective with Cade, obviously, in the pick and roll. He's shown the passing connection with Ausar Thompson, like we mentioned earlier. And to me, like that's kind of enough. Like I don't need him to do much more than that, especially with that starting lineup group. I think I feel like he shot better from the free throw line as well, and that was like something that was like worrying me a little bit. He was shooting like sub 70% from the line for a while, and I think that's gotten back into like the 70% range. So yeah, I'm big fan of the strides JD has made since the last time I was on this podcast.
So October 50% in 5 games, November 60% in 15 games, and then December 68, January 77, February 76.
Yep.
He's actually slid back a little bit in March. Omari, I want to get your thoughts on JD right after this short break.
All right, we are back with segment 3, and main thing I want to say with JD is that he was 18 when he was drafted, and it always felt like it was probably going to take, like, he like till he gets like 21, just because there's like the physical maturity aspect, and that's never been a weakness for him, but obviously the mental maturity as well. But I think what's also really been key for him is like this is the first time in his career really that he's sitting on the bench and watching what Isaiah Stewart does for like long stretches, right? Not at the front court rotation and not the starting front court. I think that's made a big difference for Duren's ability to see how Stu can impact the game the moment he checks in. I don't think it's lost on Duren that, Stu is doing this with like not Duren's physical tools, right? Like, he's got a huge wingspan, but he's smaller, he's 6'8". He's really just doing a lot of this just off of pure strength and like timing and just knowing where to be. And like sitting back and watching is like a great teacher, like seeing what good defense looks like and how it can, quiet a crowd or like hype up a home crowd and like all that. Like I think that's been important. And I've talked about this on and off over the course of the year, but like Duren never really had a center rotation to really push him and like show him how it's done. Like when the center rotation is like Bagley and James Wiseman and like you, like who is like what player in that group is like creating the type of environment where the youngest guy who's the future is going to like learn like what he needs to do. So now he's got Stu, but he's also got P. Reed, who's very solid as well. And I think that's been big for him this season, just to have 2 other centers who have been better on that end and can show him how it's done.
I also think, and somebody mentioned this earlier in terms of JB, Mr. Ray working as Magic. Somebody mentioned it with Ausar. I think JB has done a really nice job putting guys in positions to be successful with what they do best. And I think that's true with JD as well. I think if you ever ask JD to be like fundamentally sound defender, that's not going to be his best impact on that end. I think JB has empowered him to go chase some of these blocks and be a rim protector off the ball and those type of things. I do think he's shown growth in ball screen drop. His hand activity, as you mentioned, Laz, has gotten better. Even last night, he ended up giving up the bucket to Gobert. I get really frustrated because he opens his hips to the handler way too much in ball screen drop. He actually stayed square really, really well, and he was cat and mouse, and then he overcommitted and gave it up to Gobert. But it's those baby steps, and I like his activity on the offensive end, on the defensive end. I can live with some of the half-court attacks off the bounce if that's going to give us and the team all of the other stuff he's giving right now. All right, I want to get to some of the questions because I actually have another trivia game I want to play with you too because I'm just fascinated to see how you guys do. And yeah, this wasn't on the outline, so sorry. 01 says, 02, who is the coach working with the bigs? Is there someone specific?
Yeah, so their big man coach is Vitaly Podopinko, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. But Pinko, yeah, but he's been a long time JB assistant. He was with JB down in Memphis. He had an overseas career himself, and yeah, he's the coach that's worked with the bigs the most this summer. Last year it was Mark Jackson. This year is him.
Dripface says, off topic, but Bryce, do you think Darion Williams will be available second round for the Pistons? Quick answer, yes, I do. I am lower than the consensus on Darion Williams. The one thing I will say is, as you guys are seeing, with the NIL money being thrown around like crazy, the end of the first round, top of the second round, and guys returning or maybe not even testing could get real interesting. And because of that, names are going to fly up draft boards in terms of guys who are auto eligible and stuff like that. So that could change a lot. I am a little bit lower on Darion Williams. Ned Edwards. Well, let me ask real quick. Laz gotten into the second round draft talk yet? Like, is there somebody out there you kind of like that?
No,
okay.
I've done zero research. I've pretty much only watched Michigan State and like little bits of Duke in the tournament. I like Khan. Like he's not gonna be a Piston, but like that dude is a pro. Like I like his game a lot.
Khan's gonna be top 10 would be my guess, and my guy Sam Vecini has him like number 5 on his board right now. Because for Pistons fans who aren't following this as close, and you shouldn't be, like, you deserve to not have to be.
Yeah, it's been a really nice relief to like not have to focus as hard on this. I will say though, like I'm coming to Summer League this year, already got the hotel, already got the plane.
Yes.
But
Nice.
it is weird. It is weird to be like, oh yeah, they're not gonna have like a dude for like me to be excited. Like it'll be Ron. Like, I'll be happy to see Ron.
And Bobby.
Like,
we'll get to watch Bobby, but we got to go live. The three of us got to go live out at Vegas together.
We'll do
Can we lock that in, Laz?
Yeah,
like,
we'll
let's lock
that.
Okay, bet. Along with supper and everything else, of course. But I would just say what I was going to say was like the draft isn't after Cooper and Dillon. This class isn't as loaded at the top as what some people may be telling you. Ned Edwards says, would there be worry if Cade came back just for the playoffs, having some rust when he gets back? So essentially, if he doesn't play again for the regular season, but he's fully healthy for the playoffs, 02, do you think that there's a little bit of worry, like maybe game 1, he struggles a little bit coming off the long break or something like that?
Yeah, for sure. First, quick correction. I said Mark Jackson earlier for the assistant coach. Mark Bryant, not Mark Jackson. But I mean, I guess like you could always worry about rest in that scenario, but they would also have, I'm sure, some pretty intense practices leading up to that. And that's something that they'd be pretty cognizant of. Like it would be a 2-week absence. Like, I don't know if that's enough for you to have any significant worries about him coming back after like a full season of basketball. Like he's played 66 games. So, yeah, I mean, if it gets to that point and he misses that much time, then yeah, there's probably some concern. But like, if he gets cleared in time for the playoffs, then like you probably don't worry about the rest aspect because all teams will be coming off a few days of rest anyway. So
yeah, the in-season, or not the in-season tournament, the play-in tournament, like takes up like a half a week and a half, something like that.
Like 3-4 days, something like that.
Yeah, and it's like you mentioned, Omari, like you get some tough practices in. Like I'm not overly concerned with it if he's perfectly healthy, right? And able to like go through those practices, which we expect.
Pistons make me drink. Oh, dang.
See, last season had a way different meaning than this season. Like
in
last
celebration,
yeah. Like last season, it was like depression drinking. This season, he's like taking shots. So
yeah.
We're all 21. It could be worse. I've listened to some podcasts where like the names like really trick up the hosts as like saying some very inappropriate things. I was like, I just read it. Like, oh man, well done. Would you guys say Ausar developing tighter handle would outweigh trying to develop a 3-point shot? They do give us a legit question here. I would say yes, because I just don't think he's ever going to develop a 3-point shot. Like my faith in that is pretty low right now. His handle being as consistently tight as we see like one time a game is ridiculous stuff, in my opinion, Laz. Like, every game he has a dribble move where I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, if he does that consistently, like, forget about it. But where would you stand?
I mean, like if it's like 2K and like I can adjust the sliders, like I would rather give him the 3-point shot. But like in real life, like you mentioned, Bryce, if you're less confident in in his ability to become like a decent perimeter shooter, a functional perimeter shooter, then like yeah, having a good handle uh opens up on ball opportunities for him that like the athleticism and his finishing ability like with both hands is something that's like been a sight to behold. He had a really nice move like last night, finishing over Gobert with the left, and I was like,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
So like yes, if you gave me like if you like handed me a magic wand is like which one is like I would give him the 3-point shot.
Sure.
But yes, the handle improvement like would make him like that would be he wouldn't be a 4 at that point. Like he's definitely not a 4 if he can handle the ball.
Well, and we talk about secondary creation or second unit creation, like maybe it develops into being good enough to do it in that sense. O2, your thoughts?
I'm going to swerve the other way and say the 3. I
Okay.
think if Ausar can capably knock out 3-pointers, like you probably don't need that crazy of a handle to still be pretty effective. If you have like if he has a 3, I think his current handle would just naturally kind of open things up a bit more. And he's already got a great first step. Yeah, like there's no question a tighter handle would like transform his game, but I think a 3 would also transform his game. Like you look at the rim pressure he provides with like no 3 at all, and now teams actually have to close out, and now he's just throwing down Vince Carter dunks all game. So I'm gonna go with the 3.
I agree with both of you that the impact would be greater from 3. I think the more likely outcome is the handle. And as Mr. Ray says, if they did ever get a stretch 5, it would change some of that dynamics as well. All right, let's speed through these a little bit. Like we can get some. Daniel Jenkins says, I wouldn't ask this if he didn't have a twin in the league, but is the gap between Ausar and Amin's performance more driven by difference between the two or differences between Ime and Bickerstaff? I don't know that it's system oriented. I think Amin just kind of caught the NBA by, off guard. I think Asar's lack of minutes and not starting the season probably. But listen, Asar's getting a lot of love from, I don't know, national people I talk to recognize what he's doing defensively. Like he would be getting all defense love if he had the games played. So I think Amin is further along offensively right now. And I thought he was coming into the league. So that I think his handle is tighter. I think the way he finishes is a little bit more refined already. But I think Asar's probably getting the right amount of love that he deserves.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Laz.
No,
yeah, Laz, go ahead.
I agree with Bryce. Like Amin is also like a slightly better athlete.
Yeah.
Which when you're as good an athlete as the Twins are, like I think that creates a tier of separation. Like you mentioned, Bryce, like even coming in, like the handle was better for Amin. And yeah, like Ausar missed 20 games, like easily, like more than a quarter of the season, with the blood clots. And so I don't think you can just like hand wave that away. Amin didn't score 30 against the Celtics like the first night of the season, right? This has also been a slow development for him as well.
Yeah.
But he's made an impact. So yeah, that would be my explanation.
Yeah, I would also say that like Ausar, like I think people make the mistake of assuming that because they're identical twins, they're identical players, and for them, like that's not really the case, or the case for most identical twins. Brook Lopez and Robert Lopez were not identical players. Cooper Flagg has a twin brother, Ace Flagg, that's not even on the same like recruiting radar as he was, and he's like a class younger. Chris and Keegan Murray are not identical players. Like it's not uncommon for one twin to be a little bit better than the other, or a lot better, or for them to have different games. Like a lot of online discussion I see about Ausar and Amin, is with the basic assumption that they are the exact same player in different circumstances, and they're actually different players in different circumstances. So I don't think any comparison between the two is really fair. Like I think Amin has always been seen as like the on-ball one just because he has a tighter handle, and Ausar has been seen as like the more off-ball one with more upside in the shot just because he did shoot the ball better than Amin did in OTE. So some of that is just more so like what archetype you value more. But going into the draft, Amen was seen as having the better handle and thus because he's the injured. Yeah, Markieff and Marcus Morris weren't the same players. So so that's what I would say. Like I think a lot of those questions assume that they're the same player and they're just not. So they're in different systems, but it's not because of Ime and JB. It's just because they're not the same player.
Yeah, I will also like. I guess I must not see the Ausar lack of respect that maybe is out there. Or
And I think he's getting respect too. Yeah.
Yeah, like yeah. So I guess that's my thing is I don't see the Ausar disrespect. So I guess I don't fully understand people saying like Amin gets too much credit, Ausar doesn't get enough or something. So that would be my thought. Mr. Ray says, I don't know the cap situation, but I'm still hoping we throw the bag at Miles Turner this offseason. I will quickly say we did do like a little bit of a breakdown on this. Anytime you're talking about signing a guy, especially that Miles Turner is going to demand, you're not most likely bringing back Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, or Tim Hardaway Jr., or you're like maybe getting Schroeder because you have to go the cap route in that scenario, and then you only have the room exception, not the tax MLE and stuff like just understand. I'm not saying that's a reason not to do it, Laz. I'm just saying whenever you talk about Miles Turner or Naz Reid or somebody like that, unless you can move Tobias Harris and get off his money for nothing, or maybe Fontecchio, when Cade makes all NBA, the most you can get in cap space is $20 million without trading somebody, and that's renouncing everybody, which means you have to use cap space to bring everybody back plus the room. So I think Miles would be interesting, but I mean, then what happens to JD and or Stu if you bring in a center also?
You can't throw the bag at Miles Turner and give JD an extension, right? Like that just doesn't work.
Yeah. Go ahead, O2.
No, I don't have anything to add. I was just going to say anybody expected this summer to be a big swing. I think the best argument for this summer is that they bring everybody back. Like, I don't think you look at this roster and say, we're about to shake all this up and bring somebody else in. Especially if it's going to cost you as much as it would cost Miles Turner. So I'll just put it out there now because we are drifting closer to those discussions like being more frequent. I don't think you look at the roster or the cap situation and say, we're about to go and make a big roster move. Like, I don't think that's how they're approaching it.
Steven, I'm not saying it's unjustified. I'm just trying to point out what would have to happen for Miles Turner to come in. That's all I'm trying to do. Philip Bender, Denny Avdia is the perfect Tobias replacement.
Portland's not letting him go. Have you seen him play lately?
That's what I'm talking about right there. Like what it would take, it's not happening.
Wes just had the biggest. I'm putting Wes on the screen real fast. He doesn't get to talk, but he has the biggest smile because that is Wes's victory lap is Denny Avdia, and he should take as many rounds as he wants. Denny Avdia is good, and that will also make an appearance Thursday on the best offseason moves of the NBA season. Yeah. So, Steven Suggs, what's the chance to be able to re-sign Dennis? I mean, I think they can, but again, that's if they don't go the cap space route, then they can sign him with his non-bird or like
do they have his bird rights? They traded for him. His bird rights should come with him.
Yeah, so I think they have his birds. I know I went through this with Keith Smith.
Okay.
For Tim Hardaway Jr. and Schroeder, whatever scenario they're in, like is good enough to bring them back. Okay. And so I think one of them is non-birds, but they're making enough that you can go like 175% or whatever it is. So I think it will come down to, Steven, to answer your question, whether Dennis wants to be here or not, right? Like I think, and do they think they have a need for Dennis to, Steven, your point earlier about 12 guys that want to play with J.I. back? Do you still need that guy? If Ausar's taking more on ball reps, what is Marcus Sasser? So O2, is that kind of your thought as well, that they would be able to if they wanted?
Yeah, I mean, Trajan said, when he addressed the trade deadline that, like, Dennis is somebody that they, envision being part of this group beyond this season. So, I would say the chance is great. The GM's on record saying that they're open to it. So, great chance.
All right. Sharon Dalton, Coach of the Year. Laz, call your shot.
Atkinson.
Where would you vote? What do you think happens? Give me both answers.
So, like, obviously, I'm biased, and I would vote Bickerstaff, and I think he's deserving of winning Coach of the Year. I think he finishes in the top 3. But you get on a 60-game pace, and you win Coach of the Year. Like that's kind of how it goes.
0-2?
And Dagnall won last year, so they don't do back-to-back years generally.
0-2?
Yeah, I think some of it will come down to how the Pistons close the season. Like, but I guess some of that too. Also, like, I think ballots go out maybe next week. I actually got the ballot email today. Like, I had the All-Star vote, so I have the awards votes this year too. But to answer the question, like, I would vote JB because they tripled their win total, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But I also think that there's a great chance JB will win just because of that. Like, you have a team that went from like a laughing stock to like one of the most promising teams in the league. A team that I'm sure most teams don't really want to face in the first round because they know it's going to be tough. So, to be taking a bad team and making them good in like this sort of like cheesy 90s sports movie way is more impactful than like inheriting a good team and then the team becomes great. Like, that's just kind of how I see it. Like, the Cavs, so much of that is like not just the offense changing, but also like Evan Mobley made a leap as a player this season. So like that's a lot of it too. I just think what JB's done is like more impressive. The Cavs are great, but like they're not the best team in the league. And I think the Pistons turnaround is much more impressive.
Yeah, so I am leaning back towards JB. I honestly had answered Kenny for a lot of the year, but I think whenever we do it on Game Theory here in a couple weeks, I still think Kenny probably wins it, even though JB is very, very deserving. Steven Suggs, what round do you think the Pistons will make it to? First, second, or third, Laz?
I got playoff tickets, so I'm hoping second. Okay. I'm hoping second at least. I think the matchup with the Pacers is tough. I think Halliburton has played really well after the All-Star break. I think he's fully healed off the hamstring thing that like really impacted his game. The stretch bigs has given Jaylen Duren trouble in the past, and we talked about his improvement defensively, but a lot of that hasn't been against stretch bigs. They haven't faced a stretch big in a while, so you want to see that. And then, a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last season versus a team who has next to no playoff experience. On paper in general, like that's a tough matchup. But I do think the Pistons would like stand a good chance of beating the Pacers in the playoff series. And however many games they are, I will be there. I'll be in my seat.
0-2?
Yeah, like I would say first round just because they are like the newcomer in like a scenario where they're going to be playing some team that has been there at least once. And in the case of New York and Milwaukee, you have a lot of guys with multiple years of playoff experience and have made deep runs. So especially like teams are just going to fully commit to harass Cade, and they're going to force Schroeder and other guys to step up playmaking, and that's going to be tough. Against Indiana when they can just have Pascal Siakam pick up some of the slack, or like New York, obviously they have multiple guys who can do it. Milwaukee with Dame out, probably not anymore. But you still have to account for Giannis, who of course is one of those guys who's unsolvable. So I could see them pushing a series 6 or 7 games for sure. But playoff basketball is a little bit different, and I think if they can't get enough shot creation, if teams are harassing Cade the way that they have all season, then that's probably going to be a deciding factor.
It is a real shame that we don't get to see how the team reacts to the ball being forced out of Cade's hands into Jaden Ivey's hands, right? Like that would be something you'd really be looking to see for this team moving forward, and the injury made that not possible.
All right, Steven Sugg says, when is Malik Beasley not eligible for Sixth Man of the Year? He is going to be eligible for Sixth Man of the Year. All you have to do is come off the bench in more games than you start, and Beasley right now has only started 17 of 75 games. The stat that drives me crazy is the Peyton Pritchard stat, like setting the record for three-pointers made off the bench. And I'm like, dang, Malik has just started. Like, I don't think whether Malik started games or not, he would still have the same number of threes. So, Langdon for Executive of the Year. That's probably a conversation. I don't get into that too much. This one, and then I want to do it'll be a quick trivia. It'll be real fun. Well, it may not be fun. I think it'll be fun. 01 says, is Eddie Murphy too old to play JB in the movie?
So here's the thing. Like, obviously, like I would say yes, but the other thing is like once black bald men get past a certain age, I feel like you can passed for like a lot of different ranges of age. So I would say like Eddie Murphy could probably pull it off if you're just going like bald head, like clean face, like that's like
How old is JB? JB's in his 40s, right?
Yeah, he's young, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy looked like, I don't know how old Eddie Murphy actually is.
63.
Okay, he looked like in his 50s in Beverly Hills Cop 4 or whatever the most recent like Netflix one was. So like I don't think Eddie Murphy could get away with it. I think you're looking at like that's a good question.
Jeffrey Wright.
I want it for some reason I want to say like Jonathan Majors, even though I know that's not popular right now.
Yeah. I would go Jeffrey Wright. I think you could get Jeffrey Wright.
Oh, that's a good one.
He's got the beard. He's got the beard.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, I don't know who you guys are talking about. So, sure, I agree with both of you. Okay, I want to play this game real fast because I was talking to my wife the other day, and I told her I didn't know the number of any player on the Pistons outside of Cade Cunningham because literally it's in part of his nickname. Like some people call him Deuce. So I wanted to see how ridiculous it was that I can't tell you the jersey number for most of the roster. So this is like, you can just yell out the answer whenever I say it. I want to see how good you guys are at this. Okay. Malik Beasley.
5.
Jaylen Duren.
0.
Yeah, 0. I was like, it's either 0 or 9. Couldn't remember. I'm not great with jersey numbers either. I knew Bees was 5, bro.
Simone Fontecchio.
19. Weirdly.
02, would you have got it?
Nah.
Okay. Tim Hardaway Jr.
8.
02?
I would have got that.
Tobias Harris.
12. It's tricky because he wore 34 for a while, and like that was
02. You wouldn't have got that one either.
I knew there was a 2 either, as the first digit or the second. I couldn't tell you the second digit, but I knew that there was a 2.
So, Ron Holland the second. Yeah. Ooh, good.
No, double O.
Okay.
Mason has started like incorporating the 00 into the call after he scores, and I think that's really cool.
02, you're making me feel better. This is good. Okay. Jaden Ivey.
Not a jersey number guy.
23.
Yeah.
Paul Reed.
7. Yeah, no. Yo,
7.
Paul Reed was 7 because I remember because like the Pistons number 7s have classically been terrible, stretching back like 20 years or something.
Oh,
it was like, okay, like maybe Killian. Yeah. It was like, maybe Paul Reed breaks the curse, right? And we can have another guy wear 7 and like it'd be fine.
I mean, Paul Reed provides quality minutes when he steps on
the
floor. Marcus Sasser.
25.
I love it. Dennis Schroeder.
Got like a DD number. 17.
Isaiah Stewart.
28.
Ausar Thompson.
9.
Okay, now how much of a sicko are you, Laz? Dennis Jenkins.
24 when he plays.
Lindy Waters.
43. Right. And I actually know. I know Lindy Waters because at the Spurs game, the guys I was sitting next to, like Waters got in the game. And the guys I was like sitting around were like, "Who is that?" Like they were like, "We've never heard of this guy." It was like we got him at the trade deadline. He's a shooter, and then he instantly like made a 3. And they were like, "Hey!" And I was like, "Yeah, see."
All right, last one. Bobby Klintman.
Oh God, 34.
You ran the table, Laz. This is amazing.
That's crazy. Wow. You notice how I gave up like 5 ones in because I just realized I didn't have it.
Oh, 2. I would have given up 2. Like so sometimes people will make comments about the jersey color and I'll realize I didn't even notice what color of jersey that they wore that game. Like
There's a whole account that's got the record by jersey on Twitter. Yeah. I love that guy. That guy's great.
No, I'm sure it's great content. I'm just saying like I'm oblivious to numbers, jersey colors, shoes, anything like that. Wes, how good would you have done? What is Pepsi Max Threads? What is this?
The association, like the black ones with the red and blue stripes around the midsection.
Definitely the weakest ones they have in the rotation right now, for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
And they have the worst record of those.
The Bad Boys ones, the Bad Boys homage ones for the second straight year, which is like, okay, sure. But those have grown on me as the season's gone on. The court looks really nice and when they pull out that court.
Yeah, I also don't notice the court. I have no idea most of this stuff.
Yeah.
So
The thing about the black, red, and blue jerseys is that if they were just black and red, it would look a lot better. But the blue throws the thing completely off. Any jersey with Pistons jersey with red inherently looks better, unless it also and that's one of their main colors. But it's just I don't know. Like it's something about the blue that just throws the whole thing off. It's like I'm on NBA 2K my team, and people will make like these really elaborate jerseys, but I can't do that. Like I'm not like a jersey artist on 2K, so like that's how my jersey would look. It would just be like, let's get some black, like red stripe, blue stripe, like. Yeah,
Omari's like, I have a real job. I don't have time to do this.
Yeah, like that's what the jerseys kind of remind me of.
01, you raised 02, and this man be like the food critic and the jersey critic all at the same time. We haven't even gone down the food realm recently. No, I love it.
Speaking of food, like it's not really a food thing, but like Bryce, you before we recorded, you left briefly, and Laz took a sip of a liquid, and I was like, "Is that a protein shake?" He said, "That is a protein shake." And then Wes put out his protein shake that also had fluid in it, and they were just casually sipping protein shakes before they recorded the pod. And I'm like, "What kind
is that in place of supper? Who drinks a protein shake at 8:00 at night?
But they're trying to get gains, man. They're trying to get gains.
Y'all about to hit Planet Fitness right now?
I went to the gym at 5, done with the gym at 6, come back, shower, eat supper.
I appreciate it, Laz. I knew I'd get one of you to say it. I love it.
And usually, the protein shake is the post-workout drink of choice that pairs with dinner. I didn't have a chance to finish it because we're doing the pod and I want to talk to you guys. And so, yeah, I've been just casually sipping on the protein shake as we go.
Okay. All right. I will say,
Wes knows. Exactly, Wes.
Wes says gym at 4, back at 5:45, shower, protein shake, dinner after the pod.
I will say so I did a morning workout, did a 7 a.m. workout for the first time in a decade, last week. And I understand why people do it, because I was basically I had started my day and was finished with half the things I needed to do by 9:30. It's this is an amazing feeling. But getting up at 6:30 to go to the gym at 7, not an amazing feeling. Do not recommend.
I may shame my wife every once in a while, especially on the weekends when she sleeps till 9, and I get up at 6 and work out and do my film work and watch the Pistons game from the night before. And I'm like, hey, good morning. You're going to start your cup of coffee? I worked out in the garage for 30 minutes, had 2 cups of coffee, broke down the Pistons game, and already recorded the video breakdown. It's all up on the Substack, babe. And I fed the kids breakfast while you were sleeping. Look at me. I will say, I wanted to, after school today, I've been training this kid. He's going to go to play college basketball next year. He got sick. So I had this gym all to myself. And it just reminded me there's no better place in the world for me than an empty gym where I just get to shoot a basketball and nobody else bothers me. And I just get that silence of anything other than the ball hitting the ground when I dribble it. And hopefully every once in a while, the net whenever I make a shot. And
How many in a row? How many in a row, Bryce?
It's been a minute. So, but
30.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't keep track today. But then all of a sudden, these junior high kids came in from track practice and ruined my vibes. So, but anyway, I knew I was going to go long because you are the man, not only a friend of the pod, a friend of ours, and I cannot tell you how excited I am for us to meet in Vegas at Summer League, watch games, record a podcast, and more importantly, go out and have supper or dinner or lunch or breakfast or whatever we do. It will be a blast. Thank you as always, Laz. Omari. Well, no, Laz, let the people know where you're at, what you're doing, where they can find you, all of that first.
So I've been quiet lately on both on Blue Sky and on X. You can still find me there at Last Chance. Tiger season has started. I've started to dip my toes back into baseball. We'll see how that goes. Starting out games on the West Coast has not been fun. But yeah, you can always find anything that I'm thinking or feeling about the Pistons on Blue Sky or X at Last Chance.
Laz, you're the GOAT. We all know you're the GOAT. Thank you for joining us. We'll have you on again, of course, to recap this season and get together at Summer League and keep the protein shakes up. Like I'm excited to like this is like the beginning of like us like somewhat seeing the swole journey. Like I have to put it out there.
Definitely not swole. Never swole. This is a very lean build we're going for.
It's okay. It's okay. You're being modest. Big thanks to our hold on, I gotta find it. Big thanks to our audio producer Robin Chan, our editor in chief Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to Wes Davenport as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.